In this video, we will be discussing the equals method. The equals method is a method that is part of the object superclass and is inherited by all other classes from the object superclass. In the object superclass, the equals method has this signature. It's a Boolean method. It's equals object. Object is a parameter passed in. And it indicates whether some object is equal to this one. So let's look at an example of that in a program. So here I have in REPL a person class already set up. It has two instance variables, name and age. It has several constructors, so I've overloaded the constructors. There's a default constructor plus some other ones. Then there are some other methods, some getter and setter methods, set name, get age, a birthday method, and then it has a string to string method, which in another video we explain what that does. We're going to talk about this equals method in this video. Let's go back to main for a second. So in the main class, you can see that I already have two objects instantiated. I have a person Ella object equals new person, so I've called the default constructor there. And I have a person Josh equals new person, where I've also called the default constructor for Josh. And if we go back and look at the default constructor in the person class, we can see that it assigns to the instance variable name the value Ella, or the string Ella, and to age it assigns the value of 0. So what I'm going to do next then is to run this. And when you run it, the identifying information here is Ella is 0 years old, Josh, Ella is 0 years old. So both objects have exactly the same information in them. So if they have the same information, if we were going to say, are these two objects equal, we would want that to be true because they have exactly the same information. So let's go ahead and call the equals method on these two, and we're going to print out the result. So the equals method, when you call a method, so the first object is Josh, dot equals second object Ella. So I'm going to call that and see what we get. So now we get the same two statements we had before, but when I say, are these two objects equal, I get a false value. Okay, so if you remember when we talked about this, object variables are reference variables, which means they do not point to the actual information that's in the object. What they do is point to the memory address. So when this is coming back false for saying whether Josh equals Ella, the equals method that's inherited from the object class compares their memory addresses. So since we use the new keyword for both of these, that's saying Ella is one object, Josh is a completely different object. So we have mapped out two different memory locations for these two. And so if we're just using the equals method from the object superclass, that's going to give us false. If we want it to give us something different, then we are going to have to rewrite the equals method in the person class. So I've already typed that out here. I typed it out ahead of time because the typing sound very bad on the video. Okay, so let's look at the structure of this. Remember, when you override a method, you have to have exactly the same signature. So when we looked at this before, it's a Boolean return type. It was equals and then object. This thing can be different because this is just an identifier or a variable name, but the Boolean equals and object has to be in there in order to override the method. So Boolean equals object, okay? So you're passing in a generic object into this. So over here when we do this, so we have Josh dot equals Ella, so we're passing in Ella, but when we pass it in, it's being passed in as a generic object. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to cast it to be a person object so that we can look at these private instance variables in this class. So the first thing we do is say person P equals, and we cast this generic object to be a person. And then we want to say, okay, what makes the object equal? Well, if their names are the same and their ages are the same, then we want this to say that those two objects are equal. So we're going to return this Boolean value, this dot name. So this refers to the object that is in this class right now, which if we go back to main, that's Josh. So the Josh object is the this object here. So this dot name means the Josh dot name. Dot equals, so this is the equals method for strings because these are two strings, and so dot equals P dot name. So P is this object that's being passed in. So we're comparing the Josh object with the Ella object because Ella was the object passed in. And this dot age double equals P dot age. So since this is an integer, we can use the double equals Boolean operator on this. And so this dot age would be, again, the Josh age, and the P dot age would be the Ella age. So remember that this keyword always refers to the object that is in this class that we're working in. All right, so now that we've written this, let's go back to the main class and let's run it again. So when we run it again, now that we've written the equals class to say, hey, we want these two objects to return true if the names and the ages are equal, we rewrote the equals class to say that. So now when we say when we apply or call the equals method Josh.equals Ella, we get a true value there.